Hey everyone, and welcome to a fun little interview I've got today with a good man right here. I believe it is Emmanuel Padillia.
Perfect.
Excellent. So I was trying to practice saying his name before we jumped on here. So, sir, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's I feel like I'm always getting right out of the shower when I do these interviews, and like I can't help but notice my hair slowly dries and it gets kind of like poofy. The curls get poofy as it dries. But it's funny. You and I both were working out right before this, and you happened to send me a picture of your weight set, and we both have like the same Bowflex weight set. I was like,
Yeah.
I know that too.
Yeah, it's pretty good. As far as the shower, I did also shower, but I cut my hair super short to prevent exactly
Nice.
that. So,
Well,
yeah,
what's funny is normally I wouldn't ever let it get this long because my hair grows so quickly. But for once, I think I'm going to just try and grow it out long. I just kind of want to see what it looks like. We were watching a Beatles documentary recently, Get Back. And, in that, like, John Lennon, they've got his hair looks really long. I was like, his hair looks so good long. I was like, I kind of want to just try it. And maybe it'll look awful. So if it does, I'll cut it shorter. But, man, I kind of want to try it. And I do like having long hair, although this is a little longer than I'm used to. But that's okay.
Every time the problem is the in-between phase, right? Every time I try to grow out my hair, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to look really good. It's that like, after like the 6-month mark, you're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And cut it again. So if you can get past that, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll see how I can do it. Well, enough about our style choices. I know that's what folks can come So, folks, again, sometimes I've got topics for these. Today, I didn't. Emmanuel actually reached out to me and wanted to know if he could chit-chat sometime. And who am I to turn down such a honest proposition? So, sir, how are you? Tell us your story. I believe you had a little something you wanted to share with us.
Oh, well, a couple things, actually. But I was I always watch most of your videos, when they come out, especially like the interviews. I'm really interested in them.
Thank you.
And that last one in particular with White Mage, good friend of mine, I think it was a very, very interesting interview, very productive in a way where you guys like discuss like the state of the game, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to like bring my perspective on that a little bit, specifically because I think I have I would call it a little more optimistic view of where things are going. Whereas, like, I think you and White Mage both had a more, like, I don't want to say negative because that wasn't, like, the impression. It was more like, not optimistic, half glass empty.
Yeah, well, and I think we felt very, I think stagnant is a good word. Because, and I wonder if, so I got some critique on that last video, and the final point I made to me was the true point of that, which I don't know if anyone remembers it, but I said at the very end, I said, what's really crazy is that I've said all this before. I'm not saying anything new. And so I think I kind of felt stagnant. And as a, content creator, whatever you want to call me, I do feel some sort of pressure in that, well, I want to keep making videos. I don't want to just have nothing for the community to view or just have this big dry spell. But at the same time, I also kind of felt like, I don't know if there's really much else to talk about at this point, with no new product, with no new events or anything. It's just like, well, what do I talk about? And again, with my locals not firing either, I felt like I didn't have a whole lot new to say. So that stagnation, I think, really wrapped up my feelings. Just like, I just kind of feel like I'm just like floating along. So please.
No, so in that sense, I would say, as far as like all the points that you guys made, that would be the one that I agree with the most, and I align with you. The issue has been like the lack of organized play, right? And it's especially, it comes front and center when I'm personally, playing other games in the in-between, and those games have a lot of organized play. Just to give an example, yesterday, Flesh and Blood, which is the other game that I'm playing, announced their PT, their Pro Tour here in New Jersey, where I'm staying like an hour from me, and $100,000 in pricing, $20,000 to the first place.
Wow.
That kind of, it does give me, I do feel a little envious, right? Even though I participate in the game, I don't love it nearly as much as I love the Final Fantasy card game, and it just makes me feel I wish we had maybe nothing as big as that, but even a little bit, it'd be so good. Like,
so telling this honest story, the last time I was at my local shop, one of my Final Fantasy guys like showed up on the night we play, but he wasn't playing Final Fantasy, he was playing Flesh and Blood. They do like a draft night, and I don't know if this was the store or Flesh and Blood, like the owners send it out, but they had like, apparently they get new promos every month constantly. They'll send out like these I don't know, you'd call them variety packs or some kind of packs.
Armory kits.
Yeah, that's what it is. So there's always new stuff. And then they got 3 packs a win for a Flesh and Blood, and maybe the game store felt they could afford that more, because for Final Fantasy, you know, we're lucky to get 4 people, whereas Flesh and Blood, there is 2 full tables of it. And yeah, like you, like I couldn't help but feel a little envious, like, wow, man, I want to do that. How do I do that? How do I bring that to Final Fantasy? So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that was why, you know, I'll give kudos to the NA team. Like, they actually announced as well, like, what was it, like yesterday or 2 days ago?
Yeah.
They make the announcement, and at least they're communicating, and they're saying, okay, this is where we're at, this is the issues we're having, and you'll see an announcement on Organized Play soon. That's all we need for now. I wish it moved along a little faster, but again, that's out of our hands. And again, like I said, that is what I agree with. There's other games, like, I don't know, even like the My Hero Academia game has like official like Discord webcam tournaments, and they have like prizes and stuff like that. But other than that, right, which is arguably the biggest issue, I would say the other aspects of the game, I think, are in a pretty healthy state. I think this is the most fun I've had playing this game in a long time. I would say.
Nice, that's great.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into that, there's one point I want to ask you just before I forget it.
Yeah.
So you know, you mentioned that the NA they did put out a notice the other day just saying, hey, you know, we're thinking of you guys. I think they pushed back some of the products. They're having some shipping issues, and I'm genuinely curious to know your opinion on this, because I'm not really sure how I feel. Would you, if it was up to you, would you prefer to get more updates even though there's nothing new to report? Or are you fine with the sporadic updates because they have nothing to say? Because part of me is like, I wish they would like communicate with us every week. However, at the same time, if they've got nothing to report, then what's really why do that? Why yeah, it's nice to keep hearing from them, but if it's never anything new, part of me is like, so what benefit would that be? So like, do you think it would be better to have more even if there's nothing new to say? Or are you more like, you know what, I'd rather just announce something if you have something to announce?
I work in the corporate world, and my mentor, one of my biggest mentors, says that you always err on the side of over communicating.
Really? Okay.
And yeah, I think that uncertainty. Remember when it's like, let's say you're a bad example, but let's say you start dating this person, and you text them and you don't hear back from them, or the difference between not hearing back from them for 3 days or just hearing an okay is different. Right? Like your brain starts to fill in the blanks when there's silence. And it is the same in this case. When there's nothing, we start filling in the blanks. And you can see that on posts on the page where people go, like, is this game dead? Like, what's going on? There's no communication. Definitely, like, they don't care about this. We start filling it with negativity. Whereas if you made even like a, I don't know, monthly update where you say, hey, nothing new to report, but we're still here, you get a lot, 90% of that is gone.
Interesting.
So
okay.
I would prefer more updates.
Awesome. I appreciate that corporate insight you have. We need to get he's got to get his tie on, and as a corporate influencer, this is the proper way to handle it.
I forgot my blazer.
Yeah, right.
But,
okay. So sorry. I appreciate you answering that point. So you were saying you were feeling more positive about the game now. Obviously, I'm sure the bans had something to do with that. I guess to let me ask just for clarification, because you and I have never talked before this. How long have you been playing? Or maybe you'll go into that with your story about After Worlds and all that. I'll let you take over.
Well, I mean, I've been playing. I tried to play when the game first released.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend Angel Moret, he got managed to get like 1 or 2 boxes of Opus 1 and some starters, and he brought them over. And I remember, like, you know, playing with him and with other people I could find. The product was scarce, and cards were insanely expensive at the time. So I kind of like dropped it. I would say I picked it up back again at the end of Opus 3. Coincidentally, I went into like a brand new game store next to my house when I was living in Chicago, and noticed that they had like Final Fantasy boosters. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember, like, this was a thing. And I bought like 3 packs, and I remember saying to my fiance in the car, like, oh, I remember like there was this like Legend Cloud light card that was really cool and really expensive. At that time it was like $150 or something. And when I opened the 3 packs, Cloud was there.
Wow.
And that opening that Cloud kind of got me like excited. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I'll dig into this. So I've been playing consistently since Opus 3. I started like getting interested in playing competitively, and I attended, I think, the 2018 Nationals. Went like 4-0 in the morning. That was the one where we had like a 2-hour delay between rounds because of an issue with the with the software. I remember going 4-0 in the morning, being super confident, then losing 4 in a row, and bubbling out of off top and day 2. But I got there.
Yeah.
Then the year after, I managed to somehow get to day 2, somehow win all through the losers bracket, and make it to finals, where I lost to the great Sam. So made it there, made it to Worlds, made it day 2, and after that, I kind of like gassed out of the game a little bit, like I was telling you in our chat. Like I was playing here and there, but between the pandemic, delays in the releases, and then like the Sophie Doga meta, that kind of like killed my interest for a good almost year of the game. So now I'm back and trying to get back into it, because it is interesting, and I will say, like, compared to the slump that I was feeling, I'm feeling a lot better.
That's awesome. As Bender would say from Futurama, I'm back, baby.
I'm back, baby.
Well, and I couldn't imagine what that feels like, going to nationals, going to worlds. That's kind of something that I've wanted to go to more events, and obviously they're not running right now, but even when they were, but man, like, sometimes I wonder how some of these players, like, are these guys super wealthy? Like, how do they pay for all these planes and hotels to go to these things? Greg Cole's been doing stuff for the Light, out at California, but that's a plane ride. That's, I got to get off work every time. But I'll see some people that just go to all of them, and I'm just like, man, how, I don't have that kind of money, or just, so, because just going to Reunion 4, which was in Omaha, which it was 6-hour drive. I felt like pretty tired after that event, like physically tired, mentally tired. I remember, being nervous and just, because I wanted to do well and all that prep. So I was just like, wow, I couldn't imagine doing this, like, just constantly. So yeah, I can only admit it must have been very tiring.
So I will say that in terms of like grinding, I'm like the worst person to talk to, because I don't fly. I don't attend any. That's why when I got called and got second place, people were like, who is this guy? Because I never travel. I practice locally with my friends and like the events that are near me, but I've never flown, never gone to a Crystal Cup. Nothing. I practice more online and with my friends, and that was enough training to perform decently, I guess.
Nice.
I think when you like something and you obsess about it, like I do, you think about it a lot, and that's like 50% of the work, right? Just like theorizing and getting it in your head, right? It's when that becomes fun, then that's when you get good at it.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I kind of started doing this channel and such originally, was because when I got into the game, kind of near the end of Opus 7, there just wasn't a whole lot of other people doing it. Like, I think RVA was still doing their podcast, but like Josepher wasn't really doing it anymore, So, and part of me was like, well, shoot, I'll make the content that, like, I want to consume something. I want to read about the game, because Final Fantasy has been my favorite franchise since I was a kid, when I first played Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo, which was actually 6, of course. But so getting into this game was so cool, and I got these friends, so I got so, like, just, gosh, this is what I want. And then I think that's kind of why I started doing this too. I was like, all right, well, if no one else is making it, I guess I'll make it.
I actually tried making a blog, and I did do a bunch of posts that was called like Spare Gil Builds. It was for
really?
budget.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, budget builds, and at the end of the day, the entire game is kind of budget, so it kind of defeats the purpose. But I just kind of wanted to like have a little challenge and try to do decks with like no legends, essentially, for people, or like how to upgrade your starters. And I did get some good feedback, but I kind of like just stopped doing it. Yeah.
Well, and what you just said, I remember once when it was in the thick of things, like Opus 9, 10, when it was super popular, Worlds was coming up. It was just, I felt like it was in its heyday, everything was just firing. People wanted to do alternative game types, like draft, like title, like what they called pauper. So, just commons and rares, like you said, no legends, because it was so popular and it was firing so much that, because we played standard all the time. And that's very different now, at least, now I can barely get anyone to play standard. So unfortunately, things like draft and title or pauper, like, I can't even get someone to play standard, let alone these like alternative modes.
Right. I'm one of the minority fans of title. I still have
I love title.
I know, but we can't say that too loud because
we can't.
Some people are like, title is trash.
Well, which is funny because to me, title is what would draw you in when you are coming to the Final Fantasy. What draws you in? The IP, right? Okay, well, how do you play with your favorite Final Fantasy characters? You play title. I can play all the Clouds. I can play all the Tifas. I can play all the Tituses, the Yunas, etc.
So actually, I think the designers of the game realized that, I would say, in the last 4 or 5 sets. Because if you notice now, I've always said this, like, it's why I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is really popular, and some games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Are really popular. It's because of the identity aspect of it. Like, you go to Yu-Gi-Oh! And you say, oh, I'm a Blue Eyes player, I'm a Dark Magician. Like, you have, like, your identity, right? Final Fantasy, for the first few sets, was missing that. You just put good cards in a deck. There was no synergy. It was just good cards. Now they're like, oh, wait, Samurais work with Samurais. And they still need to do that for titles. They did it for 12, now for Sky Pirates, right? So I think that it took them just a little too long to do it. But that's why I think the game is getting good, because I think that identity aspect of it, you are a Dragoon player, you are a Samurai player, people do enjoy that. And identify with it, like you said, the IP. I want my favorite game is 6. I want a 6.
Yeah. I think the tribals are one of the best things they've really improved upon, is because, like you said, especially as someone who plays all the Final Fantasies, you know, the job you are, the class you have, that's one of the big key factors of the game. If you play a samurai, well, okay, well, I want to go and play as a samurai in the card game. So I am really grateful for the way they've improved the tribals lately.
So I don't know. I'd like to hear, like, not like to repeat like everything you guys talked about before, but like, if you were to say, I want to see if I can try to like get you to get some introspection here.
Okay, sure.
As to like why you think about some things the way you think, and maybe like I'll give you my viewpoint and see if that maybe changes a little bit something. So can you talk to me? Because there were like a couple of topics. Let's say let's talk about. So the ones that jumped out to me were EX. The topic about EX, the topic about power level of certain cards before compared to other cards, and the topic of certain archetypes being much stronger than other archetypes.
Okay.
So maybe there's no time to address all of that, but let's say, like for example, like the topic you were bringing up, the topic of you have an ice deck and you're trying to use Were-Eye, and then what was it, like you're trying to do a Were-Eye deck and you feel like you have too much work to do compared to someone who plays Penelo, for example. Correct. Like, can you like elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. And maybe so I play a lot of, maybe not as much anymore, but I used to play a lot of Dota 2, or I played Dota way back when it was on, you know, Dota's a MOBA, same with like Blizzard's Heroes as a Storm, League of Legends, those are all MOBAs. And those games are incredibly complicated, probably the most complicated video games you could play, because you've got these different heroes, and they all have different spells, and they're all different.
I used to be a League player, unfortunately.
So you get it. Yeah, so these games are insanely complicated. And I remember in Dota 2, you know, there's this hero called Meepo, who he like clones himself and he can control 5 of himself. So he's really hard to use because you have to micro. And in general, that was like the advantage of a MOBA, is you didn't have to do the micro strategy of a StarCraft or of a Warcraft. You just got to control one hero. So this Meepo hero, you have to micro, you have to put in all this work, but often with him, the issue is that you could get as much effect out of someone else entirely who was like easy to use. And so it was like, so why would I ever want to put in all that work if I'm just going to get as far as this guy? Whereas if you compare that to other things in life, you know, if you run a mile and I run 10 miles, I'm going to get 10 miles worth of benefit out of that. You're only going to get 1. There's no, unless your body has like crazy metabolism, you can't run a mile and be like, I ran just as much as Travis did, you know, crazy, right? So in this card game, Were-Eye, because this is the deck I've been playing, and I really like the card a lot, but to make it effective, he's got to come down. He doesn't do anything right away. Then every turn, I have to continue to make you discard, which is amazing if you have like a card like Orphan. However, sometimes you don't have that. I've got to use other cards. And you can actually counter that. You can dump your hand. Now, I know that's an advantage for me, but again, you're denying my Were-Eye effect. So having played this deck a lot, I've got to really work hard to get the payoff of drawing a card. If Penelo exists, you draw a card. And there's nothing I can do about that, which is one of the things I mentioned with David too, is that with these action abilities, with their instant speed, and that you can't, same with kites. I can't ever kill your kites because you'll always respond by using this effect. Same with Penelo.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I can kill your Penelo, you'll always use these effects. It doesn't cost you anything from hand. You're saving a forward that was going to die anyway. So it's very easy for you to do that. And so having had to play against Sky Pirates a lot this Opus and Cure series, I've sitting there wondering, man, why am I like busting my ass trying to draw a card off of Were-Eye when Sky Pirates makes it so easy? And another great comparison to that is Lightning, the Ice Lightning legend we got, versus Sophie. Now everyone says, okay, Sophie was a mistake. Sophie should have been limited banned, whatever. Agreed. So Lightning is how it should be, which is fine. But to kind of quote Thanos from Avengers Endgame, once people see how things were, like, they'll always know that. They can't ever go back to how I know how easy it was for Sophie, so Lightning, unfortunately, just seems clunky and hard to pull off by comparison. Yeah, it probably should have been that way, but I'm comparing it. And so again, it's like, man, why am I working so hard to make Lightning make them a single point of damage when Sophie says, nah, I just hang out and it just happens. So I think there was a quote once I heard from like a game designer where it said players will optimize the fun out of a game.
Yeah.
And in any game, an RPG, if I'm playing an RPG, which are my favorite games, I love Final Fantasy. If I can, if there's a spell that costs me all my mana to cast, I have to spend all my mana to cast Ultima, and it does 9,999 damage. Cool. Okay, if I can cast Flare for half my mana, and it still does that much damage, or does just slightly under it, there's no reason to cast Ultima. Why would I waste all that when I can just do this? So I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, I can expound even more, but I feel like I touched on every different game type there.
No. So I think this is hopefully something helpful for other people as well. So please. I want to start with the very obvious. Maybe there's other examples that you can bring, but first of all, we're comparing a backup to a forward. That's the first thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Backups are inherently stickier. They usually need to have more restrictions to do what they do. Mm-hmm. Okay, but let's ignore that for a second. In the case of Penelo, we're gonna use Penelo to Were-Eye because it's the relevant. Penelo is it's a great card that's being used. I agree, it's like easily one of the best cards right now. But we're gonna compare them 1-to-1 to like Were-Eye's effect, whereas maybe Were-Eye is weaker, absolutely, but maybe not because of what you're thinking. Okay. So Penelo.
Let's go to school, folks.
No, I don't mean to like sound like super like.
No, I like it. Yeah,
I'm just like. So okay, so we're or Matiski could probably say this way better than me or KP, but Penelo does have a cost to it, which is you have to build your deck around Sky Pirates, and that seems like a trivial thing, but it is a thing. With Penelo in turn 1, Penelo, if you draw like Penelo, it is even more dead than Were-Eye, right? It is. What can you do with it? It's a 5k body, but are you paying 2 for a 5k that does absolutely nothing turn 1? So there's that trade-off. Number 2, so the way you say that one way to counter Were-Eye is like they can discard their entire hand and play around it. Well, the way you play around Penelo is killing her, right? Now, you might say, okay, but they get value out of it. Sure, but when your opponent built the board, their reward is that Penelo. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't do anything about that reward. They got their Exodia, they got their reward. What you can do is accept that it's going to happen, and then the most value that you can get is, okay, but you're going to get the value on my terms. That's how you get the game back. I am going to attempt to remove so that you don't do it whenever you want. You do it when I want, right? The same thing with Were-Eye. Your opponent discarding their entire hand to counter Were-Eye is exactly what you want them to do. Yeah. You're actually getting value out of Were-Eye because in other situations, that might not be their optimal play. If your opponent is discarding their hand for Were-Eye, just to prevent you from playing Were-Eye, you already got the value out of them.
Yeah.
I like, so while I know it feels good to draw, you want to do the effect, but sometimes the cards give you value by precisely not doing their effects, but what they do to your opponent to counter those effects. And in the case of Were-Eye, I'm not saying Were-Eye is a fantastic. I personally, I'm not a huge fan of the card, but if that's what your opponents are doing, it's doing exactly what you want it to do. You're getting the advantage out of that.
Just out of curiosity, real quick, why aren't you a fan of the card? Is it just too expensive, or
what?
no immediate value, or
no, it's just not my this card is not my playstyle.
Oh, fair.
It's I think I don't know. I think that could have cost 3. Probably.
Yeah, I think so too.
But other than that, I think it's a fun card, and I think it is doing what you want it to do, just not the way that feels good.
Yeah,
and that's why you Canelo feels good. She draws you a card immediately, but it doesn't feel good when you want to reduce my forward and I force you to draw a card.
Yeah.
So that's I think switching that mentality of not what it does for me, but what it does for the game will help you reevaluate, and help hopefully people who are viewing this reevaluate what each card in their deck does, and why you put it there. Right? A lot of times Rawbell doesn't get me a backup back, but it forces a removal out of my opponent's hand. That's all I needed to do. Right?
Very true. Yeah.
EX, I love that conversation. I would like to talk to White Mage as well about like his suggestion of like if you have less.
Oh yeah, where like the higher damage player doesn't trigger him.
This I don't want to talk too much about this because KP said that he might put a video out of that, and I do want to see that. I love listening to KP talk statistics. That man loves. Yeah,
he loves his numbers.
But what he commented on your video, he said something like, which is very true. It is the risk reward aspect of it, right? Like I think what Mage said an example that he's playing against an aggro player. He's the control. He manages to stabilize, attacks into the player, and then the EX like made the aggro player
allow him to sneak in the win. Yeah, exactly.
As control players, that attack often shouldn't happen because that's what takes your game to the next level. What is it worth if your opponent has you at 6 and you have them at 0? Having them at 0 and at 1 is no different.
Yeah,
no different if you're the control player. So sometimes that point, is it worth it? Like, can they come back from that EX? That is the risk reward. And as control players, often, and you'll see it. You can watch some VODs of Okimoto playing his winner. A lot of times he just sits back. He may have like 2 points of damage on the opponent. He just sits back. Why? Because he has control and he knows that in a turn or 2 he can seal it. And an EX is the only thing that can bring it back for the opponent. You have to identify those scenarios. I know it feels bad, but that's what pushes it. You have to know when to hold back. And sometimes it'll screw you over. Sometimes attacking was the right choice. But weighing those options is part of every card game has.
Sure.
And EX is no different. Feels bad sometimes, but feels really good when it happens to you, right? So I think as of now, EXs are decently balanced. I don't have too many complaints, but I think that it is one of the newer players' more topics I've heard most against the game. Like, it's too RNG. It seems that way on the surface, but I promise you that it's not, and I hope that KP puts out a video.
So hold on, I'm going to call you on that. So you don't think EX bursts are RNG at all? You think?
No, EX bursts are RNG as much as a card game is RNG, right? As much as your draws are RNG.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, there is RNG, of course. What I'm saying is it's not more RNG than other card game mechanics. AOC, that not drawing your third land in Magic. Then I got mana screwed. I got mana flooded.
Gotcha.
Right, it's the same thing.
Fair enough.
I promise. I know it feels different, but the numbers are there.
Well, so can I push back on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can expect that.
Yeah. Well, I almost just like, okay, I'll just let it go. But so the game I was referring to in particular, and again, this is just one game. This is absolutely just one game. So because a lot of people and I had kind of chatted about that, because I think EX Burst, I think everyone feels a certain way about them, And in general, I do like that the mechanic is in the game. However, sometimes, for one, if I were the designer, I don't think any EX Burst should allow you to get a board wipe. So, Star Sibyl, Tyro. Again, I like the idea, and KP and I talked about this in our interview, I like the idea of an EX Burst being a +1. I draw a card, or I get rid of one of your forwards. I don't like the idea of it getting you a card that now completely flips the game. I've never liked that. Star Civil's been around a long time. So that is one. Two, and I was talking about people with this about the damage mechanic, and someone said, well, it's kind of the same as damage, right? At damage 5, this deck gets this effect. And I was like, that's true, but you know that. So if I know my opponent has cards that come online at damage 5, I'm not going to push you to 5. I'm going to sit you at 4 because I know what happens if you go to 5. I actually have some control over that. Couch it however you want. Unless someone has stacked a card on top of their deck, neither player knows what will get revealed into damage. It could be an EX burst. It could be a card that doesn't matter. It could be a card that they needed to draw. It could be that Susano they needed to board wipe, and because you attacked, you now just denied them that. I don't think anyone would argue that no one can know for sure what that card's going to be. There's an inherent, like you said, there is an inherent risk of could be something good, could be something bad. Another thing too with the bursts is the bursts themselves are very swingy in their power levels. So again, damage 5. If I have Eldori Emperor or Agrius, 2 Opus 13 cards, that at damage 5 they get such and such effect, they will always do that effect. That burst could be anything. It could be the Tyro that swings the game. It could be a Titan with no forward, so it doesn't matter. It could be a draw card. I think that's another reason, and I'm trying to speak for new players. New players, please correct me if you feel differently. I would imagine that's another reason it feels so bad and it feels so swingy, because one burst could be completely irrelevant. Another burst completely can flip the game. So it's not even just the burst will always do this. The burst is random. Worst example is when I had a Cure Series match and I was Bart's Boko against Sky Pirates. I party attack Bart's Boko. I bring out Materia. Materia brings out Noctis. Yep. Ready to go. I hit Kukulane the Impure into EX Burst. So they turn off the Materia, which means I now have 2 light cards in the field. They both die and they draw a card. So now that's a very specific example, right? So that only happens in that one. But man, did that just feel like, wow. My opponent didn't even do anything. They literally are sitting there. They could have been reading the phone book. And I just killed myself because, that's, again, very specific situation. I won't deny that. But
right.
I think for me, and maybe new players feel this way too, because the bursts themselves are so swingy, it's not just, it'll always do this. It's who knows what it could do. So.
Was that your turn 1? Sorry that I...
No. I think that was turn 2. Well, and again, it was Sky Pirates versus Bart's Boko, right? So this was game 2. So he'd already clobbered me game 1. He got set up, and I'm not going to outvalue him. He can literally just kill Boko with Bismarck. He can dull 2 forwards and shut off Boko. So I have to be the aggressor in that matchup. I'm the aggro deck. I will never outvalue Sky Pirates if the game goes on forever.
Right.
And I think that was frustrating too in this ice matchup I was referring to with White Mage, is that I wasn't drawing backups that game. I love my backups, trust me, but I wasn't drawing them. I had to go aggro and just start dropping forwards because that's what I had in hand. So now my opponent's already on 3 backups, 4 backups. I have to go. I'm the beatdown, as they would say. That article, who's the beatdown? I don't have a choice. I guess I could technically wait and hope that, but they're already ahead of me on backups. Am I ever going to outvalue him? And he's playing Avalanche. I don't think I am. So I made the decision as a player, I don't think I'll ever outvalue him if it goes long enough. I need to attack into him. And so then when he gets the Tyro that searches out the Titan that wipes the board, it was frustrating because it was okay, I don't know what else to do. Now, granted, you could say, well, that game was lost for you anyway because you didn't see backups. That's fair. You could say that you were always going to lose that because of that. So if you want to put it in that category, I guess I can't argue with that.
No, I think the Sky Pirates example is actually way better because your deck was doing what it was supposed to do, right?
Okay,
and your opponents just went poof.
Yeah.
That's so poof, the problem with that. So the problem with that is some, you're saying, some EXs. Oh, it's Animal Farm, not all.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking.
Some all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's such a good quote.
All EXs are equal, but some EXs are more equal than others. Yeah. I think that's just a problem with individual card design.
Yeah.
I will say the game design's perfect. I think having EX is absolutely a mistake. The part of Puchulane, that's such a 1 in
I know, isn't it?
$1,000,000,000 that it's. I can't fault it. Puchulane 99% of the time just draws you a card.
Yeah.
Right?
Normally, I would never have an issue with that card. It's just that happened to be the one bad scenario.
But I will agree. For example, Tyro, badly designed card. Or not friendly attack. Just
the EX burst was too much, yeah.
Now, but you know that Tyro exists, right?
Yeah.
And in a lot of games, even when you are the aggressor, because I do agree, I like the article of who's the beatdown, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think people put that as a Bible, have that like a Bible. Okay, it is true, but not all aggro decks are the same. Not all control decks are the same. I think people think aggro is just swing, swing, swing. Not necessarily. I would say, I might get some flack on this. If I were to classify like aggro, mid-range, and control, I would say that mid-range is the easiest archetype to pick up and play. Aggro goes after and then control. Aggro is actually way harder to play than people think. Aggro has to know its matchups. Aggro has to know. Once in a while, there's a bring that deck that comes in that literally like you don't have to do anything. Yeah, but that's very rare because even Doga Sophie, you had to know your matchup, when to go all in. But aggro is actually surprisingly difficult to play. Yeah, to adjust your game plan versus what you're playing. Sometimes your game plan is put one forward, swing, 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 put a bunch, swing for one turn. Sometimes it's swing, play, swing, right? It depends. Sometimes it's not do anything and then put 4 forwards, 1, 2. Like it really changes depending on your matchup. And people think, no, they're just attacking. Bad aggro players, yeah. But so an aggro player situation. Not in your situation, but you're saying like because you're talking more about even like 2 mid-range decks, one of you is the beatdown, which is correct, right? One of you is the beatdown, but your deck still has a plan, right? The very first thing you do when you have a deck is what is my win condition?
Yeah.
How does my deck win? Sometimes it's being the aggressor, but sometimes when your deck is forced to play differently than what it does, normally that's a losing game. You're just trying to play the odds a little bit, right? And it's unfortunate. But it is what it is. For every time it happens to you, it happens to your opponent as well. So I think those situations skew our view a little more than it should. I also think that even in the same game, who's the aggressor and who's the control can flip.
Yeah,
like
true.
And that identifying when that sometimes you're the aggressor and then you stabilize. And you should be the control, but people are no, I'm the aggressor. No, you have to wait. You got control back, step back, right? When to push the pedal is, I think, the number one skill for anyone who wants to be competitive.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a lot of in-depth. I could talk for days.
Oh, sure. Well, can I comment on that, Teach?
Yeah.
Since you're but you're a world's player, so I definitely want your insight on this. So again, I'm thinking it. Sometimes I think people, and I know I'm a passionate guy, and I blah 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 sometimes or whatever. But
that's
I express myself. I think sometimes people think that when I complain that I'm not thinking about the moves. So again, in that ice matchup, because this is a very good example, my decks, most of my decks are designed. I'm mid-range, I want to go to 5 backups, and I want to play efficiently off of that. In this particular matchup, and ice in general can be kind of expensive. There's not a whole lot of like value refund in that. I'm not seeing backups, which means I'm not seeing Were-Eye, so I have no way to get card draw. So my choices are discard cards for hand until I draw a backup. That just seems like a bad idea, or put out forwards and start beating them.
Just go ahead.
And
of course.
So I was talking to John Schreiner about this because again, of course, he was casting it as RVA, and he said, "Well, a choice you could have made was you could have tried to be patient and seen if you drew backups." And that is a valid option. Personally, I didn't think that was a good option because what if I do that and now I continue to draw forwards?
Right.
So in my opinion, it was better to move forward. And honestly, sans that Tyro burst, I might have won that match because I had him at no hand. Of course, it didn't work out for me. I got burned. But in a situation like that, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, so let's say you're in that situation, your deck isn't giving you what you need. If Okimoto, he plays a control deck, he wants his backups out. What if he's not drawing them, and he's got to just jam forwards out? What is the right play there? Do you sit there and wait and say, well, I hope I draw him? But you have to remember, every turn I delay, I'm giving my opponent, who's already ahead of me on, like field state, board state, I'm giving him more time too. It's not just me that's getting a chance. He's just getting more value as well. So I'm curious how you feel about that.
It's very deck-to-deck specific.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be the answer. I didn't know I asked because I was like, the answer will be I'd have to be in the match.
I can tell you that, for example, I've been in that exact situation, and I actually can show you a picture. So, funny enough, the person who, when I was at Nats, the person who knocked me into the losers bracket was also Sam Prime.
Oh, really?
My first match of day 2 was Sam Prime, and I have a picture still on my phone where I think it was the Wind Water mirror, or it was I was playing Wind Water. He hit 6 backups into my damage.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I had no back. So yeah, that situation happens. It's and you, like you say, I had to play Pains just to have a body or something. You do what you can, and I think you see it as a feels bad, but based on what you're describing, that you actually should be like, okay, you actually did the right place, right? It just didn't work out. Sometimes you're gonna do everything perfectly, and it's just not gonna work out. But you should actually see it as a positive, where I almost got him, even though I was like, my deck was giving me trash, right? I think you should, if you flip that mentality, I think you'll do fantastic, because you did everything correctly. You said you almost beat him, right?
Well, I don't know if I almost. I think I put him up to like 3, but his hand was empty, which is where I want to be as ice. So
exactly.
I was like in a good spot, all things considered, and then the Tyro got him the Titan. And
so I think in your case you did exactly what you needed to do. It just didn't pay off, and that is okay. So, and a lot of the times it won't. But like what I mean to say, this isn't specific to Final Fantasy.
Oh sure.
I think this is the point that I want to bring. This isn't specific to Final Fantasy. This is card games in general. There's no card game in which that is. In fact, Final Fantasy is the one card game, or one of the few card games, where that isn't even that bad, because EX Burst can bring you back from that situation.
Yeah, it can save you
Other
too.
games, you're dead. So that's why I simp for this game. Because there's a lot of good things in it.
In that very match, when he hit me back, he hit a Lassie Dragon Soryu, which lets me reveal the top card and draw it if it's ice, which of course. And it was funny because John was like, "Well, see, you got a burst too," but I feel accurate in this by saying, "Yes, but I drew a card. He got to search out the best." I think that's a little different. Like, I don't think that's the same value.
Tyro,
but again, with my point, I think that's why, because the bursts are so swingy. Because drawing a card versus search out the forward you want, those are very different effects.
I think Tyro throws a wrench into my argument always.
Yeah,
so like it's like I have to admit that's, but that to me, that it's not a problem with the EX mechanic. It's just like whoever doesn't Tyro is like, bro, like please just no. How about we don't? Because again, like, it's the trap card, and every time EX conversations come, it's like, but Tyro.
Yeah,
it's, like,
it's the old dies to Doomblade. It's like, I
right.
can't do anything about Tyro. So no debate on that. Tyro is silly.
No, I'm kidding, but you are correct. It is an issue with card design.
Yeah,
I'll concede that point. But to give just a little bit of input as to why I think Opus 15, and why it surprised me that White Mage said
he felt like it didn't do anything.
I am very surprised about that. If you look at all of the top decks, at least more than 10% of those decks are Opus 15 cards. I'm surprised. True. Like, let's look at Sky Pirates. Sky Pirates is nothing without Kite's Philo and what is it? Kite's Philo and Penelo. Yeah. Like, literally the Penelo that we've been talking about this whole time is Opus 15. Samurais died and then resuscitated because of Cyan and because of the Samurai backup and Brynhilder.
Oh yeah, Brynhilder too.
And Bahamut, Bahamut and Brynhilder. You're right, Bahamut, Brynhilder. The twins. I don't know if you saw my good friend Nacho qualified for his nationals with a twins deck.
Yeah.
Right. It's literally a twins deck. Rydia decks are everywhere. I think no one has yet cracked that card perfectly. But Rydia decks are a thing. Like, I think Opus 15 changed everything. Dragoons are a thing. Like, it's not like tier 1, but
yeah, but they've been a thing since Opus 12. I think since that backup came out, I've personally seen a lot of Dragoons.
I think the Wind Dragon backup pushed it a little more. Like, that's exactly what they wanted. Right?
Yeah.
And I can have this argument all day. Like, I know even Ines, who did really well at Dragoons, he's like, "Oh, Kane's kind of mid." I'm like, no, Kane is surprisingly good. I have a Dragoon. I swear I'm this close to taking Dragoons to an event just to show off my list. But no, I think Opus 15 did a lot of good things for the meta. Like you're saying, it's it was toned down a little bit, thankfully.
Yeah.
The power level, I think this is the power level where the game should keep, where they print strong cards, but they're like, but you have to play Sky Pirates, but you have to play Sandwich. If we do that, I think we can get to a pretty balanced state where there's at least a couple of competitive decks, and we're not like just all stuck playing Dataluma Cactuar, right?
Well, and what you touched on is a really good point in that, you know. So here's the thing. I'll say I'll actually directly address anyone who watches these videos. I can only go based off of my own experience.
Of course.
So where I play at my locals, not that they're really even firing, you know, one of my guys plays almost nothing but fire. He's a big mono fire. So my feelings on fire are going to be very different against someone who never plays against it because I see it so much. You know, same with why is Sky Pirate so because it's the only deck I've seen. I have to fight Sky Pirates over and over again, so it's especially frustrating because it's constantly in my face. Whereas if I was I haven't seen Dragoons. My one guy, he plays Dragoons all the time, so I have certain feelings towards that. He also loves to play Vice Kings, you know, Snow, just rush you down. So your experience is going to be based on what you go through. And this came up in Opus 11 when the pandemic first started, was that everyone, I think, was kind of out of it. They felt, you know, we didn't know what to do because the pandemic had happened. And 11 was especially frustrating for me because the only thing I would see, and I played that RVA weekly, week in, week out, was Kadaj, March Ritz, and Broska's Final Aeon in every deck. Kind of like some version of that list. And so, of course, it was frustrating because it was just constantly in my face, but I also think it was probably the best deck. And John and Chris would always say on their podcast that, well, if we weren't in the pandemic, though, like if you could play in person, and I said, sure. But again, we have no way to know that. Same right now. Yeah. If my locals were healthy and firing and my store was actually getting product, I'd probably feel a lot better. I probably wouldn't feel as stagnant. But when I have very limited instances to even test the game, it's, you know, it's hard enough to test this ice deck, and I'm running it into Sky Pirates 5 times. So it feels like, God, what's the point of this? So, and I'm not saying that even to make an excuse, but just that, again, I can only go based off of my experience. I wish I was in a place that had a thriving locals and I could test out all these different decks and that people were playing different things. So then, yeah, Sky Pirates might be at the big events, but not everyone here is jamming them all the time. So
yeah.
I just want to put that out there that, again, I can't say what is that you are locals, the viewer who is watching this, you know, maybe you don't even get to see it, and that's good for you, but I just go based off of what I have to play and face in my time, so.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's all a result of just simply no way to play with a large amount of people in a consistent basis, right? If that was the case, if we had more people brainstorming, then it might be something different. But for now, we know what's best, and a lot of people like to stick with that, and that's okay. Depends on what you want to do, right? If you want to be competitive or like play your favorite pet deck, I think that's the first choice people have to make. And like if it was up to me, if I were to say what my favorite deck this set is, it's Dancers, 100%.
Dancers
my favorite deck, and you can ask all of my friends. They're like, I keep going, but that's not Dancers. It's garbage. It's me messing with you. I love the deck. I love the deck, and I can go toe to toe with whoever. I would not take it to the train, but it's my favorite deck.
Yeah.
So I hope that maybe we can have this conversation again when things pick up, because I think our like you're saying, our view is skewed because of what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I am trying to keep the optimism because I know, and I've said that to everybody, and again, everybody who I play like Flesh and Blood with and all that stuff, they all like, oh yeah, I heard of that game. It looks really cool. I just don't know if I want to get into another card game. And it's like, it's really good. Yeah. It's the best one. Like, seriously, I've tried everything else, and I tried Digimon and sold out in like a week, and I tried the other thing, and it's a good game. And I think that we should be grateful for it, and hopefully the company will realize, hey, we have a good thing going on here, and they'll throw us a bone once in a while, right?
Well, and since you've kind of given me a chance to address some of that stuff too, you know, I'm a pretty social person. I'm an extrovert, and so I'm just always having a better time too when I'm there in person with people at R4, even when I'm losing, which doesn't feel good, but I'm sitting across from a real human being. You got this nice interaction. We get to banter, which is nice. Whereas here, if I lose in an online tournament, and maybe I'm not even talking to my opponent, and I'm just alone in my office, with a computer, just doesn't feel as good. And two, with you saying being positive, like, I'm all for that. Like, believe it or not, I'm a very positive person. I love that. However, at my core, I believe in honesty above all else. And if I'm not having a good time with anything, whether it's a game, a video game, my house, whatever it is, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. That's just not me. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to sit here and rant, this game is awful and it needs to be disbanded and burn every copy you've got. But I'll say, yeah, it's a frustrating time for me right now. So I just wanted to say that.
No, I no, and of course it's not being naive, right? Because that would be like the other spectrum, like, no, everything's fine, copium, right? No, it's not. Everything is not fine. But as far as like the things that are not fine, we know what they are, and unfortunately they're out of our control.
Yeah.
But some of the things that don't seem fine actually are a little better than we give it credit, like in terms of game design and stuff like that. And so I think for all the bad things, there's good things going on, and I'm giving it some time, doing what I can and playing other games while I have the time. But as soon as this picks up, I'm like diving head first because I am having a lot of fun.
That's great. I love hearing people say that they're having a great time with it. Well, and here's something I don't think. I mean, if someone can argue this, please go for it. But I don't think anyone can argue that, especially with these last couple sets, the game has become more uninteractable with action abilities like Pinello, like Kites, Althea, and in particular, we've seen a lot of end-of-turn effects come into play now too. Neo-X Death, Sophie. Effects that literally, even if you had an answer to it, you're not allowed to use it. I don't think I would mind the Kites Vaughn play so much if I could Amaterasu that Vaughn when he came back in. But because he enters in the end phase, even if I've got it in hand, I'm not allowed to do it. And and we've seen a rise in that. And it almost seems like, I wonder if that's design meant to counter other designs. So like, well, we want people to play their good cards. We don't want them to get killed right away. So we'll do all this stuff in the end phase so that you can't Amaterasu Sophie. You can't use Stola the Sophie, which is nice in that sense. But then again, now it creates this issue of like, oh man, you've got all this stuff that I'm not even allowed to do anything about. So if you can refute that, please do. But I do think the game has become...
So I mean, that's always existed. It's just now, as answers get better, it's exactly what you're saying. As answers get better, then the cards get better, because at the end of the day, there's nothing more unfun than your opponent not letting you do what you want to do. Yeah. Like in the example of Wire, you want to draw cards with Wire. I want to get my Sky Pirate.
Yeah.
And when you don't let me have my Sky Pirate, that feels bad. I don't want to feel bad. I want to feel good. I want to do my things, right? Yeah. That's the philosophy. And since they printed Amaterasu, then they have to print stuff that maybe Amaterasu doesn't answer everything. But let's go back to Opus 9. Did it feel good when it didn't feel good when I just went, I have 3 back of Yuna Pain. I go, Yuna Riku, and I go 3 Pain Zidane.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't feel good.
Nope.
Right? Now it's weak. It's a play that right now it's not very strong, but at the time, you could technically interact with it, but with what cards? Yeah. Right. Like it's just the game correcting itself.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
And that's fair. Well, and again, I appreciate having a different perspective, and that's why I do these interviews and talk to different people, because I'm not saying I'm 100% right or that my feelings are the only feeling. Again, my feelings are based off of my experience and what I face. So I love hearing a different perspective. I love seeing that. On your point about EX Burst too, just as I'm just kind of like shooting the breeze randomly off my head. Go ahead. I wonder. This is just me theorizing, but something I said stuck in my own head, and it was about the Kuchulain play, and that where I and it wasn't just to you. I said this to White Mage, and I've said this to a few, that my opponent didn't do anything. I killed myself. Like literally, I attacked and I killed myself. And I wonder if that is maybe part of the reason that contributes to EX Burst feeling bad, is because not only is it just luck, your opponent isn't actually doing anything. They're not making a decision. Okay, I'm going to put this burst there. It's just like, okay, you hit, look, you did all the effort and then you got punished for it. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. Again, I don't know.
That makes sense, actually. No, actually, I didn't add.
Because you're the attacker. Yeah, your opponent literally is just sitting there. They could be in a different room and you just hurt yourself by playing the game. Like,
no, I see. I see
what you're saying. It's kind of funny when you
saying.
think about it that way.
it's interesting because I think that might be right, actually, because I think it's because in a roundabout way, a lot of games do things where you kill yourself. It's just like in this one, it's like very directly, right? To give you an example, like if you overextend in MTD and your opponent plays haste forward and kills you,
sure,
you killed yourself for not leaving a blocker, right? But it doesn't feel as bad because you saw your opponent do something.
Yeah.
Right? Like I guess that's a good point, actually. I never thought of it that way, and I just dude, that play was hilarious. I'm sorry. That's
no,
so
it
funny.
is. Again, in any other situation, it's just they draw a card. It happened to be the play that just ruins the game.
That is so, like I would feel so bad I would feel worse. Not if I was your opponent. I would feel so bad because I hate making my opponent feel bad.
Yeah. Well, and so like at Reunion 4, and I was playing a version of Sophie, and I had Omega in there. And when I started winning at the end, again, I'm not a fool. I was a patient player. I legit would build a wall with Omega and Agrius, and I just sat there.
Yep.
And because again, I knew one of my guys was playing fire, and it was one of those turns I could have attacked, and I said, it's just too risky. If he has haste, I was like, I've got the wall. Omega will slowly kill him, as will Sophie. Like, I'll just be patient. So a common scenario I'll find myself in is they're on 4 damage, and let's say I've got 2 forwards. And only one of them can attack. And it's like, do I attack and put them to 5? The downside being, if they have any 5 spikes, I got to be careful if they hit a burst. However, the upside being, if I put them to 5 this turn, I'm showing lethal next turn. Now my 2 forwards, and I know in my hand. But and again, of course, you have to make that decision in the moment. But that is something I think about, and I'm sure any good player thinks about is they do think about this thing.
So that's that is a common and actually difficult spot.
Yeah.
Like put them at the 5. Okay. Then you go, let's say you have removal in your hand. It's like, I could get away with not attacking because even if they put something in front of me, can they remove both of my forwards at once?
Right.
If yes, then usually maybe attacking is the right choice. Can they not? Can they remove one forward? Then I still have one forward to swing next turn, put them at 5.
Yeah.
Can they? Because if you put them at 5 and they remove one forward, you put them at 6 next turn. You didn't win anyway, right? So in that situation, you're not winning anyway.
Yeah.
So all right, maybe I step back because I don't want the extra. Can they? Is the only option to put a blocker in front of me?
Right.
Okay, then if I have a removal, I won't care. I just stay back. They'll play the forward. I remove it and swing 2 times.
Yeah.
Right. It's what do I have? What do they have? It's
right. Folks, I want to thank you for listening to myself and Emmanuel just talk about cards. I hope you enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed getting to know him here, and I appreciate his your unique take on it. And I love hearing different perspectives. I just like chatting about the game really more than anything else. Good, bad, in between, nothing around. Like, it's all fun to me. So thank you for coming on and reaching out to me and saying you wanted to chit chat.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and keep doing what you're doing, right? We do need more content, and in the future, maybe a round table with a few guys or something. I'm always down for talking.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Ooh, I'd love to get a round table going one day. That's a good idea. So maybe we'll ask someone throw in the future, right? Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, and let us know what you thought in the comments below, and until next time, take care.
See you guys.